Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. Excited. Episode 263 of the podcast, where we're always
263
coming up with new TV show ideas, new pilot episodes for those TV shows with character arcs and stories and plots and
stories.
Sometimes we cast characters.
Cliffhangers sometimes.
Every once in a while,
I have
throw in
cast
some music. I'm excited.
I have cast one of the characters in this show that I'm about to explain to you, but the only cast member I have is a long dead actor, so it will be difficult to cast.
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant. He's gonna be Nathan D. That's the name of our principal character. But before we start, I'm going to read you a little paragraph I wrote that is kind of how I got into the idea for this show, right?
Should we say the title?
The show's title is The Standard Deceit.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? And I'm like, ooh, what is the Standard Deceit? And I was like gonna be all edgy and be like, the Standard Deceit is love. Oh, it's going to be like a tragedy about romance and shit like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I want to do something with ghosts.
Yeah, thank God. If you did a romance story with the Standard Deceit, I would have left the recording.
Fair enough. But here it goes. I'm very proud of this. I'm not that proud of it. But before you is a world of rules, laws, and fact. A world that, however monstrous, makes sense. That world is a lie. The real world is one of great madness and derangement. This cloak of sanity is the universal untruth, the omnipresent falsehood, the Standard Deceit.
Oh.
That's how the show would open. Roll credits, the end of the show. It's just me reading that.
Yeah.
And I see. After I wrote it and read it out loud the first time, I was kind of like, this is almost like a Twilight Zone thing. Like, that is kind of how the Twilight Zone starts each episode. So it was like, it could do an anthology thing, but I was like, I'm not a great lover of anthology stuff. Like, I like an anthology from time to time, you know, if I'm feeling frisky, I'll turn on Black Mirror or whatever, but I prefer... If there's going to be an anthology situation, I prefer there to be an underlying element to it. So that's kind of what I did in this show. So it is a occult detective kind of action horror show set in 1967 in New York. Right, that's the principal setting. We'll get into the characters shortly, but 1967 New York, right? So there's stuff going on in the world, in the streets, you know. New York is kind of a dangerous place in the 60s and the 70s, especially in the 70s. But there's still, like, people are worried about communists. There are people going to Vietnam. Like, there's a lot going on historically at this time. And JFK was recently assassinated. You know, all this stuff that we're gearing up for the moon landing. And so in all of this, we're going to find a young man by the name of Nathan D. D-E-E is how you spell his last name.
Okay.
He has been sectioned off to a sanitarium after reporting to see ghosts and various other occult creatures. He is a kind but oftentimes untrusting person who will put himself in harm's way to protect the innocent, but is also very judgmental of people's lives, right? Like, he doesn't really understand people who like to lead alternate lifestyles, right? And so he's kind of like a small, kind, reserved young man, right? I kind of imagined him sort of Buddy Holly-esque in appearance, right? Kind of a lithe, skinny guy, Coke bottle glasses, curly hair, right? And our second main character is Richard Mars, an elderly man in around his mid-60s, or so he appears to be, who has seen it all and done it all, and is now currently recruiting a new partner to help him deal with various occult issues all over the US of A. Right? So Richard Mars is like your Van Helsing type. I was thinking Peter Cushing. for Richard Mars. Like, if you put Peter Cushing slightly older, like right before A New Hope.
Slightly older?
You know?
He's dead, Charlie. He's not getting much older.
I know but I mean Van Helsing, Peter Cushing, age him up a little bit, like before A New Hope. Because A New Hope, Peter Cushing is a very frail old man. But Van Helsing, Peter Cushing, like Dracula Peter Cushing, is too, like, lithe and too, like, ready to move and get into the action, right? And you're like, why does that guy need a partner? So I'm like aging him up, right? Mid-60s-ish. And he's kind of, he's Peter Cushing. He's kind of a stuffy, older British gentleman, right? And he's constantly smoking a pipe, and he's a little Sherlock Holmesian, right? But Richard Mars is an occult detective who's been all over the world, and he's seen lots of crazy things, right? And he sees a potential in Nathan that Nathan may not even see in himself, and also has some secondary motivations, shall we say, for wanting to get close with Nathan and get him to be his partner, right? So we'll start out with the pilot episode, right? We open on the Hargrove Institute.
Oh,
there we see a young man.
Remember the Hargrove Institute?
The Hargrove Institute.
I had to look up the Hargrove Institute. It's one of his former shows.
Episode 161. So nearly 100 episodes ago. Yeah. Hargrove Institute. We see a young man, long hair. Thick glasses. As I said, he's very skinny and he's got like kind of scruffy facial hair. And he's looking out, forlornly over the campus of the institute, right? And he, we zoom in on the window that he's looking out, and then we go inside the room that he's inside, and we can tell that this is a sanitarium. This is a place that they put crazy people, And so everyone's in white, everyone's wearing the exact same clothes, the rooms are all white, there's people jabbering to themselves, there's people covered in their own feces. Mental health was not exactly treated very well in the 1960s, So it's effectively like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, American Horror Story Asylum, like that kind of a situation. And he's sitting there and he's looking out forlornly over the thing, and then we take a blink, the camera blinks once, and then we can see what he sees. And we can see across like all of the, all over the campus, there are all these ghosts and creatures crawling around all over this place, and they're horrific looking teeth and eyes and mouths in places that they shouldn't be. Then we look back over at all of the patients, and they all have various imps and devils inside their heads stabbing away at their brain, and only Nathan is able to see it, right? And the audience, you're supposed to be like, whoa, but then we cut to Nathan's face and he just kind of sighs and rolls his eyes and looks back out, right? And then we see a car, like a very old store-style jalopy, driving down the long entrance roadway into the Hargrove Institute. And Nathan can kind of see an almost angelic kind of light coming off of it, right? And he is taken aback for a second. And the car parks out front, right? And Richard Mars steps out of the vehicle, right? He adjusts his hat, looks around, looks up at Nathan, gives him a little smile, and then he goes up to one of the doctors, shakes his hands, introduces himself, and Nathan's just watching all of this happen from the window. A few minutes pass, right? And then Mars comes walking up the door, and you could the hallway, and you can just hear his footsteps clanking against the linoleum floor, right? Mm-hmm. And then he gets into the main room, like the guards unlock it without question, because this guy is obviously, he's in some big stuff. This guy's a hotshot. And so they unlock the door and let him in, and Mars looks around and he catches eyes with Nathan, eye contact, and then he walks over to him very gently and casually, pulls up a chair and sits next to him, as Nathan kind of turns his head quickly and keeps staring out the window, right? And that's when Mars introduces himself to Nathan and, explains, and Nathan's like, I don't know you, what the hell do you want? And Mars begins to talk to him about his past, right? And we can tell Mars knows a lot about this kid, about Nathan. He talks about, like, when you were 14 years old, you started telling your parents that you could see things that other people couldn't, you know, and it always got bad, and it was always worse, and telling people never made it any better, right? And you could see horrors that no child should ever have to witness, and I'm sorry that that happened to you, but I'm here to tell you that it's not in your head. It's all real. And Nathan's like, shut up. You know, like, I've been being told I'm a nutcase for the last 4 years because he just turned 18, you know? And I, like, shut up. I'm not listening to you. I don't want to hear what you have to say. And Mars insisted. He's like, no, you are going to listen to me. Or what you're seeing is real, and I am the only person on the planet who can help you deal with it. But you have to help me. And Nathan's like, no, get away. You know, I've been trying to not see these things for my entire fucking life, or for the last 4 years, and you're trying to tell me that they are real and it's a good thing that I can see them and whatever. Fuck off, right? And Mars is kind of taken aback a little bit. You know, he's been rejected. His offer of partnership has been rejected, and Mars is a little unhappy, right? But then he takes out of his pocket a small, like, leather pouch, you know, and he pushes it towards Nathan, and Nathan, like, picks it up and what? And he's like, just a gift. And here's my card, just in case you change your mind. Right? Mars leaves, walks out the door, drives away. Right? Nathan opens up the little leather pouch and he sees a pair of glasses. Right? And the glass is shimmering in a certain way that glasses shouldn't. You know, like, the glass is different in these glasses than in the ones he's wearing right now. So he takes his old glasses off, puts them aside. He tries on the new glasses that Mars gave him, and he looks around and he can't see any of it.
Ooh.
Like, he can't see any of the demons, or the imps, or the corpses, or the monsters. He can't see any of them, right? And he's kind of like, you know, taken aback and really shocked. And then he looks away and he sees the car drive out, and he looks at the card in his hand, right? And he tucks it into his pocket, right? Or into his shoe, like somewhere that people aren't gonna look for it, you know? And he goes back to his room and he goes to sleep, you know? He wakes up in the middle of the night and he hears something, like a moan, like a groaning, right? And he puts on his new glasses and he walks out of his room in the middle of the night and he sees one of his fellow inmates, right, standing in the middle of the hallway, and he's groaning almost in pain, right? And he's staring up at the sky, his mouth at the ceiling. His mouth is agape, right? And Nathan doesn't know really what to make of this. This is very strange. I'll go get a guard. And then he thinks, and he takes the glasses off, and he can see this sort of spectral mountain of flesh and, like, tendrils and fingers and eyes pouring out of this guy's mouth, right? And it's crawling up all over the walls and seeping in through the air vents and everything, right? And he sees all of this happen, and then he sees all of the doors to the cells open simultaneously, and all of the people, you know, all the patients, they come out and they all have this sort of meat golem coming into their mouths, and they're all groaning, and they all come towards the guy in the middle, right? The initial one, the first one, and they begin to tear at him, rip and tear at him. Their fingernails are chipping on his flesh and on his bones as they tear him apart, and they begin to eat him. And he's not even, his groaning, his moaning isn't changing in any way. He's just allowing it to happen as everyone in the hospital now, it's not just the patients, it's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's everybody has this spectral meat golem in their mouths and down their throats and into their lungs and their stomachs, and they're now tearing into this the first victim of this thing. And Nathan quickly puts his glasses back on, and he just sees all of these the patients tearing this one guy apart, and he runs up to the payphone. He runs up to the phone on the wall, and he dials Mars. And as he's about to dial, that's when Mars kicks open the door. Right, he's got a shotgun, and Nathan, takes the glasses off once more, and he sees that Mars is kind of almost cloaked in this sort of angelic armor, it looks like, and his gun has been blessed and is radiating a sort of holy light. And that's when Mars starts just blasting. And he's killing these patients, right? But he's not aiming at the meat golem that's obviously controlling them. And that's when Nathan yells at him, like, aim up, aim up. If you shoot that thing, they'll stop. And Richard Mars at first is kind of like, what? What do you... Fine. And he aims up and he blasts, right? What to him looks like nothing. But to Nathan, he sees that this creature is beginning to fail and bleed and ooze black sludge. Yeah. And he says one more time, and Richard fires, right? The shotgun blast rings out, and then the creature falls dead at their feet. Now they could both see it, right? And Richard Mars goes up to it, gives it a kick, and he announces to everyone, go back to your cells, everyone. Like, go back to sleep. This is all one big bad dream. And they all seemingly, like, in unison turn around and they walk back into their cells and they close the door. And blood is dripping from the walls and from the ceilings and all over the ground, and half of a man is still there. And somehow, miraculously, his legs are still standing, even though his entire torso has been just, like, mangled. Right? And Richard explains that this is a subdimensional imp. It's come in, probably could sense that Nathan had the gift. He was able to see, and so I don't know even what he was trying to get with you, but, you know, he was here for you. Is the offer still on the table? And Richard Mars, like, looks at him and gives a little smile and says, you're goddamn right. And they both get in the car and they drive off.
Yeah.
And they arrive at Mars's home. Right? At first dawn, they arrive at Mars's home and he walks into the house, right? In this massive, like, Westchester estate. It's in the heart of New York City, right? And it's this beautiful old house that's very obviously been here for decades, if not centuries, right? And all of a sudden they walk in and Mars, like, starts shouting, Reggie! You know, he just starts screaming for Reggie, and then a dog runs down, and he's like, oh, you have a dog? Also, then that's sweet. Nathan starts scratching his chin, because this is the first normal thing he's seen in a while. He also hasn't seen a dog for at least 4 years, you know? And that's when the dog starts talking. And then the dog, like, says, hey, my name's Reggie, please don't do that. I am very interested, like, I only like my personal space. And Mars goes to him, Reggie, why do you look like that? And he's like, I don't know, I thought it'd be fun. And they, like, puff of smoke, and now Reggie is just kind of a guy, you know, but not entirely. He's got red skin, he's got a little mustache and a little chin hair, right? He's dressed in sort of robes that don't look to be from any time period in human history. They're just these sort of lovely flowing robes, and that's when Richard Mars explains that Reggie is a djinn that he made a deal with a couple of decades ago, and was able to keep him trapped and imprisoned in his house, and now he's basically my butler, you know? He's just my magic butler. If you don't know what a djinn is, it's basically an evil genie, D-J-I-N-N, and then the djinn, right, Reggie, takes the bag, the one little bag that Nathan has, and he says, yeah, basically, I'll show you to your room, come on, follow me. And so they go up all these stairs, and you can see all these photos of Richard Mars with, like, important people in history, and, like, fighting a dragon or whatever, and you get the sense that this guy may look like he's 60, but he's at least 200 years old. Like, he has been around for a very long time, and he has done a lot of crazy shit, you know? And we see, like, all sorts of references to his adventures and, you know, fighting the Nazis and, right, all this stuff, right? And so they get to the room, and that's when Nathan, you know, goes through a transformation. He shaves, he showers, right? We could still see the, you know, caked on brown blood, like, splattered on him and on his face, and he'd almost forgotten that it was there, and it all comes off in the shower, and we could see the water at his feet is turning, like, brown and filthy with all of the just shit that was on him at that time. And he shaves, and the djinn gives him a haircut, right? And he comes out, and he's kind of dressed like, think Steve McQueen from Bullet. Like, he's got, like, a black what do you call it? Turtleneck on and like nice pants and cool boots. And he's like all dressed. This is his outfit. And he puts on the glasses, and the djinn takes those glasses and he rubs the lenses a little bit and they turn into sunglasses. And he's like, now they actually look cool. Okay, cool. And he puts on the sunglasses. He walks downstairs to see Richard Mars, and Mars is sitting at the table. He's having a cup of coffee and he's smoking a cigar, reading the paper. And he's like, oh, look at you. You clean up so well. You know, and are you ready to go on our first call? His first call? Oh yeah, we get these all the time. You know, subdimensional imps, demons, ghosts, stuff like that. This is what you agreed to, kid. You didn't think you were just getting a free ride, did you? Yeah. And a nice pair of shades? Don't worry about it. Let's go. And so they walk off and they get in the car, right? And they both kind of are you know, not excited because Nathan's still sort of dealing with watching a man be ripped asunder, but he's also kind of gotten used to seeing horrific shit because that's, you know, been his life for 4 years. And so they both kind of sit, and there is this sort of air of like, yes, this is right. This is what we are supposed to be doing. And they drive off into the day, into more adventures and fun and excitement and scares and horror and stuff. End of episode 1. That's the pilot episode. You know, what do you think? What do you think's going on?
What do I think's going on?
Yeah. Do you think there's a grand conspiracy? There might be.
Well, now I do. I thought this was more of a Monster of the Week kind of show, but
it is more of a Monster of the Week kind of show. But I do think that we'll have a little bit of more like world building and stuff, because Nathan D is very much an important character. He isn't just a guy who has the sight or whatever. He does have importance in a sort of grander scale than helping people fight monsters. But episode 2, I have an idea. An ayahuasca cult has managed to turn a little girl into a doorway for subdimensional demons to crawl through, right? And we'll, you know, and it's going to be horrifying and terrible, right? And it's this cult, and they are sort of like a whole bunch of like not kids, but like very like teenagers, like 18, 19-year-olds, and they're all like sort of into drugs and getting high and getting drunk. And then there's the main guy who is in his sort of like 40s, and he loves having, you know, all these young women fawning over him, but he also loves power. And so he was able to find this little girl and transform her physically into a doorway for demons to get through, and they crawl through her mouth. It's like, it's fucking horrible. And so the episode starts with Mars and D being like, there's been an influx of demonic activity in this area. We have to figure it out. Right, and they're investigating. They eventually figure out the cult angle. And so D goes in undercover and joins the cult, and he's sort of seeing what's going on, and he's using his sight, right? He's taking off his glasses, he's looking around, right? And he could tell that all of these people are sort of under a pseudo-hypnotic suggestion from the cult leader that has taken, you know, very weak-willed but totally normal people and turned them into, you know, monsters who will torture a child for, you know, for the affection of their leader.
Yeah.
And that's when the little girl sees him, and she can tell that he's not a part of it. Like, maybe she also has the sight. And so she begins to like whisper in his head, into his ear, right? When they, you know, she's talking to him, and she's talking to him about how he's cursed. He's cursed just like she is. He has something that he has to do, right? And she can't be more specific. She just kind of passes out, right? And the episode will end with Nathan and Mars. Like, Nathan eventually gets figured out, and he gets kicked out of the cult, or they try and kill him, and he escapes. And he and Mars come back, and they're, you know, fighting these cultists, and Nathan's using his fists, and maybe he's got brass knuckles. I don't really want it to be like guns and bombs and stuff, right? But I do want Nathan to have a little bit of I want some action in this. You know, it's not all just like horrifying monster shit and being sad. there's some action going on, so he's throwing punches, and eventually he sees, right, the little girl, she is weeping, right, as the cult leader is doing his final incantation that will bring, as many demons as he can muster to the plane through this girl, and she's going to be killed doing it, and Nathan is, trying to save her, trying to stop the cult leader, but he just can't. He can't get to him. He's being, repelled by a magical force field, and that's when the little girl, looks at him, and she nods her head, and she asks him to kill her. And he doesn't want to do it at first, but Richard tells him there's no other way, and he plunges a knife into her heart, and she dies instantly, right? The demons are halfway out of her mouth when he finally does it, so they all get sucked in, and then we see the guy, the cult leader, his magical power has all been dissipated because he failed to uphold his side of the demonic bargain, and he falls to the ground. I thought he was floating. He was like, I have so much power, right? Yeah. Floating, all sorts of shit flying around. He falls to the ground, and he's a 60-year-old man, and he's flabby, and he's out of shape, and he's lost all his hair, and he's, obviously been using demonic magic to keep himself young and sexy and stuff, And so all of these cult members are arrested, and the cult leader is taken by a very strange duo of gentlemen who are in all black, wearing black sunglasses and driving a black Chevy in the middle of the night, right? End of the episode.
Is it Will Smith and
It's not Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, I promise.
Okay.
It is the Men in Black, though. The concept of them, But you know what? If we could get Will Smith, I would get Will Smith. But I have a feeling he wouldn't do it,
I don't think so. I don't think he would do it either.
Will Smith doesn't strike me... Oh, Jaden Smith would do it. Do you reckon we could get Jaden Smith to do this podcast?
Yes.
Yes, we could. I wonder what's... you know what? If you ever meet a celebrity, ask them to do our podcast.
Okay.
And I'll do the same. Yeah. Another episode idea I have is Mars and D butt heads with a hippie commune that have recently constructed a golem. If you know what a golem is, it's basically a giant clay monster. It's from Jewish folklore that protects the innocents. But now the golem has been constructed in order to stop deforestation that's happening in the Canadian wilderness. And so these hippies built a golem to basically punch tractors and stuff. And they butt heads with Mars and D because Mars is unhappy that these kids are using and, fucking with power that they really have no concept of, but he can't get that mad and because, well, they haven't killed anyone. It's not like they've hurt anyone. They're just trying to save a forest. But because they're fucking with a lumber company, the lumber company starts fucking with them back. And so there's this, kind of almost assault on the hippie commune by a private military company hired by the lumber company. And so you have a badass fight sequence where you're gonna get you get Mars and D sort of trying to do their best to mitigate human suffering, and you have a fucking SWAT team with AK-47s and laser sights and shit. I don't know if they had SWAT teams in the 60s, but whatever. You have a cool 60s SWAT team rocking up and fighting basically the Thing, and what happens is most of the hippies die or just kind of run away. And they take the golem, and Richard is kind of like, we should kill it. It's an abomination, it's a horror, it's a monster. But Nathan is able to convince him that this golem, it never did anything wrong. It's never hurt anyone. It has hurt people, but it hurt guys with machine guns who were shooting it, so that's fine. It's not to blame for all this death. And so eventually they decide to release it into the Canadian wilderness. And it becomes Bigfoot. That's the thing, is that it's Bigfoot.
Okay.
There's no Bigfoot. There is a magic Jewish golem. Well, Nathan decides to give it a fur coat That's the thing. And to keep warm in the winters, and it wears the fur coat, and people think it's Bigfoot because he's a giant. Yeah. Episode 4, they go to a museum curator has been possessed by the spirit of a medieval witch. The witch, I'm kind of running through these now. The witch is, doing bad shit, but gets a hold of Dee and starts to tell him of a dark and treacherous future that awaits him, and before she can get any further, that's when Mars puts a bullet in her head and, kills the witch by killing the museum curator, of course, right? But they're kind of like, Nathan is a little taken aback by that, because he's like, well, you've never been that. Why did you do it when she was about to talk to me about treachery in my future? That's a bit weird. And so it's left on this kind of like odd sort of cliffhanger. Episode 5, Dee discovers his heritage, which has been hidden from him by his family, but also by Richard Mars, which is that he is a direct descendant of John Dee, a British occultist who worked closely with the Queen. I believe it was the Queen, the monarchy at the time, and served as their, basically with court
I actually
wizard,
know a lot about John Dee, so that's funny.
Really?
She
I
thought
was just looking up.
Fun. He got knocked out of the circuit. He can't. He was like a big, massive charlatan. Absolutely massive charlatan, obviously. But that's interesting that you picked him. I think he's kind of interesting.
Well, I was looking into famous occultists, right? And obviously there's Aleister Crowley, but that's the one that everyone knows.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that one. That one's kind of boring, And he was like, there are photos of him and shit, That's not as fun. I wanted to go back a bit further, so it was like 16th century, John Dee, worked for the Queen and shit. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so in this universe, he isn't actually a charlatan, but he was somebody who was, very much into magic and into a lot of dark magic, let's say. And thus his, canoodling with the darker powers has cursed his bloodline with a righteous purpose. That's the wording. And so he, Mars has known about this, and that's why he's been keeping an eye on Nathan, and he couldn't really talk to him until he turned 18, because it's, suspicious, because these other people are keeping an eye on him. But now he's an 18-year-old man, and he's able to make his own decisions, and so that's why he was, like, so insistent on coming to meet him, because he's been keeping an eye on him for his entire life, basically. But now he knows he's got the sight, and he's not a fucking psychopath, so I can use him, all right? And so he's been cursed with righteous purpose, and they get into a fight about it. Mars and Dee, right, they start arguing at each other and screaming at each other and all this stuff. And Dee storms out of the house. He just storms out and he leaves, right? And he's walking down the street and he's got a cool leather jacket on. And he's dressed like Steve McQueen, and all this stuff. And that's when he is kidnapped by the U.S. Department of Occult Affairs.
Oh.
USDOA. Yeah. Dee is then interrogated by the quote-unquote men in black, who are trying to uncover more information about this kami magic, right? And they, keep bringing things up. Like, kami magic. Well, it's also, obviously, we're doing an alternate history magic show, so communist wizards assassinated JFK. That's how it goes. If we're setting something in the 60s, we have to say it was commie wizards that assassinated.
Headcanon.
Commie wizards assassinated. No, it was definitely magic was used in the assassination of JFK, and they don't know who did it. They can't figure out which, what magician used magic to assassinate JFK, and so they just say it was the commies. And they are, like, just torturing him, trying to get more information about trying to get more information about Richard Mars and all of his commie, leanings and stuff. And he's like, I don't D is, while he was pissed at Mars, he's not gonna give up on him. So he's tortured for weeks and refuses to divulge any information about Mars. And that's when, after weeks and weeks of just being tortured and deprived of food and sunlight and all this stuff, right? That's when we see Mars kick the door in with a shotgun again, right? Just like kind of mirroring the first episode. And he has brought this kind of sort of fucking like Avengers style team of various like occultists and magicians who all owe Mars a favor. And so he, had to find out where they were keeping D, and then he had to build this team of cool like wizards. And so you get a guy who's like, a guy who has the spirit of like a tiger inside of him, and so he is able to like push the spirit out of him and attack people with that. You have a chick who's a werewolf. You have all sorts of like cool wizards that we would get into in subsequent episodes. But for right now, what's important is getting D out, and so we have Mars, and he puts his arm around his shoulder and like carries him out, and he gets outside and he looks up at the sky and he blinks and he sees the sun, or sees the moon for the first time in weeks, and he, tears start to run down his face because he's so happy, right? And that's when they break the news to him on the car, right? On the car ride away from the secret government base, they break the news to him that he, due to his the righteous purpose that he has been cursed with, is to be a doorway. Like that little girl, he is also a doorway to hell. Physically, he is a doorway to hell, and the site is simply a manifestation of that before it can really fully be formed. And so, and the only way to be safe, is either to kill him or teach him to really master his abilities. And up until this point, Mars has kind of just been teaching him, seeing if he's got the stuff. Seeing if he's brave, if he's smart, if he's kind, right? All these things. And if he wasn't, he would have just killed him, because we can't have a guy who's morally corruptible, like that, like morally dubious, also be able to summon demons at will if he really wants to. And so now he, after seeing that he didn't give him up, right? After seeing that he was able to withstand weeks of torture and maintain his like silence, that's when Mars decides to really open up to him and tell him exactly what's going on and exactly who he is and what his powers can do. And so he says, not only can you see, but if you work hard enough and you practice and you train, you'll be able to understand what these creatures can say, to be able to interact with them, to talk with them, And that's an ability that, most of us occult, detectives and magicians and practitioners spend our entire lives like attempting to even get close to something like that, and you can do it without thinking, yeah. And so you will be one of the best of us if you let me really train you. And D, still kind of delirious and weak from being imprisoned, right, stands up, right, and he shakes Mars's hand, right, and he says, let the training begin, basically, like, let's do this thing. And that's all the episodes I have for you right now.
Interesting.
And then we would probably get into the latter half of the season where there would be more expounding on like the magic world, like meeting more of the characters that Mars knows and like going to different places. But that's the show, Standard Deceit.
Very, very interesting. I have some I have a possible tweak because I know a lot about John D.
Yeah, go for it.
In John D's obviously was a bit of a charlatan, but the real charlatan was Edward Kelly, who was his partner, who kind of really screwed over John D, and he was the one in the relationship that could supposedly see the angels, and he was very good.
Oh, yeah.
So if you wanted to, you might want to switch it to Kelly rather than D, because D was just like someone that owned a lot of all the books and was high up enough in like the court to like get audiences with people and introduce them to Kelly. And he could supposedly transmute stuff, but he couldn't do that, and the Holy Roman Emperor got pissed at him because he hired him to do this and he never did it. But Edward Kelly was the one that supposedly could see angels. And just as a side little fact, because it's interesting, Edward Kelly at one point convinced John Dee that the angels told him that they want him to sleep with John Dee's wife, and John Dee believed him, and Edward Kelly slept with John Dee's wife.
You know what? If I could see angels, that's what I would tell people.
Just a fun little Edward Kelly and John Dee fact. John Dee also famous for he thought that Native Americans were Welsh people. I don't know if that it's a very strange theory that at one point like medieval times, during this war in Wales, when Wales was obviously independent, or sorry, even before, like early Wales, like Dark Ages, like before the Kingdom of England, but after the Roman Empire, a bunch of Welsh people like left Wales and sailed to the New World and like met the Native Americans and like blended in with them. And so fun fact, when Lewis and Clark, the famous American explorers, traveled across the country, Thomas Jefferson gave them like a Welsh translation thing because they wanted to see if they could find any Welsh-speaking Native Americans.
That is really interesting.
But this whole theory comes from something that John Dee made up, essentially, because John Dee's Welsh, and he was trying to give like the English, because at that time the the Spanish had like claimed all of the New World, and he was like, well, actually the Welsh were there first, so they have a better claim to the New World. And he just made up this whole story about how the Welsh people sailed over there and like integrated with the Native Americans.
Learn something new every day about Thomas Jefferson. Well, there you go, folks. That's my show.
Fun fact about John Dee.
Yeah, Nathan Kelly now. No more D, Kelly. You got it. That does work better. Yeah. And it's I wanted the tone to be a bit more horror than action, you know? Like, so I want, like, gross shit to happen. Kind of like that Constantine show from 2015, but good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the fact that magic, it has a price and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, there is, you know, this isn't a fun, happy-go-lucky situation. This is, like, horror and death and violence, you know? Mm-hmm. And Nathan's gotta kind of come to terms with that. And Mars is definitely more nefarious than he at first appears. He is not a benevolent guy. He is a dude who has done some extraordinarily shady shit, but is kind of like a John Constantine in the sense that he's like, he does bad things for a good reason.
Yeah, he's an anti-hero.
You know? Yeah. Whereas Nathan is just an actual hero. But yeah, that's what I've got. Thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series, and it will be titled Oven Ready Revenge.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I haven't read anything at all yet for it, but you gave me the title earlier because I asked for it, and I'm nervous about what it's gonna happen. I pitched to you a possible Hot Pocket documentary. Hot Pocket as in the snack.
Do it.
Food.
As in the delicious food. That well, you don't really put it in ovens. It's still pretty good.
Yeah, I know it's microwave ready, but I can't think of anything. What does oven ready mean? It's just something you put in the oven? Is that all it means?
Yeah, like those pizzas.
Okay, yeah, like a frozen pizza.
You get a frozen pizza. Yeah. But yeah.
Frozen pizza.
Oven ready revenge. Thank you, everyone, and please have a good night.